This 93-year-old woman had multiple different heart conditions, high blood pressure for a long time, and diabetes, and literally told that the doctors really couldn't do anything more for her. And she's old and whatnot. Well, she just did my protocol, and I literally just got an email about a week ago, and I released a video. I showed her medical records, even the email from her doctor saying everything's gone. He's like, everything's normal all of a sudden. And that was crazy. And that's just one of many.
Welcome to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jenn Trepeck, talking wellness and weight loss for real life. We're here to clear up the myths, misinformation, bad science, and marketing to teach you how to eat and how to cheat. Are you ready? I'm having salad with a side of fries. Hey friend, welcome back to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm Jenn Trepeck, your health coach and host, here with you every week for Wellness Without the Weirdness. If you remember our episode 2024, I think it was fall 2024, called BioStack over Biohack, you'll know that I'm a big fan of the fundamentals, the things that we can do day in and day out that feel like small swings, but really get you home runs. And I don't know why I just used the sports analogy, but there we go. So anyway, biohacks are often actions or supplements or things that we can do that give us incremental upgrades. And my challenge with biohacks is that I think often people opt for those rather than the fundamentals. So that was really what we talked about in BioStack over Biohack. With that said, I am always learning, and I am beyond excited for today's conversation because the topic has been coming up in biohacking circles, but I do think that it can be approachable and easy to implement and offer some tremendous benefits. So let me introduce you to our featured guest. He's a molecular hydrogen therapy specialist, researcher, and host of the popular YouTube channel Uprising 144K. Struggling to find answers and overcome extreme depression due to his compromised immune system, tumors, autoimmune issues, gut problems, arthritis, wheelchair-bound immobility, and a very serious heart condition, he began his own journey to heal himself and discover hydrogen along the way. Studying the complex compound for 4 years, he implemented it into his own health regimen and reversed his health challenges. Today, he discusses the endless health benefits of hydrogen, how it can help protect against EMF radiation, topical application for skin problems, tumors, hormone support, COVID, and more, and marketing tricks to watch out for when shopping for molecular hydrogen generators. Please give a warm salad with a side of fries welcome to Greg, the Hydrogen Man.
Wow. Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because since our last conversation, I've actually started using molecular hydrogen myself. So very excited for this chat. We'll start with a bit more of your story in a second. We just have to tell our members what they're getting this week. So members, your recipe this week is an absolutely delicious 30-minute meal. It's for sesame chicken and green bean stir fry. So protein and veggies, a delicious sauce. It's like takeout at home, probably faster than you could order and wait for it to arrive or go pick it up. And then I'm giving our members 10% off the molecular hydrogen that I've been using called H2 Tabs. So that link will be in the episode notes for everybody to try it. And then we have the discount for our members. And finally, because it's the third month of the quarter, it's also time for your live Q&A. That's a one-on-one, just you and me. So if you want this recipe, if you want the discount, if you want a one-on-one health coaching session, be sure you're a member. Go to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries. For $10 a month, you get weekly recipes, a monthly article or tool, extra discounts from me and our partners, plus access to live Q&A sessions. It's a total deal. I say it all the time. It's a steal when you take advantage of the full offerings because you're going to save far more than that $10 cost. It's a no-brainer way to show yourself that your health is a priority. Plus, your membership supports this podcast and this community so we can continue to bring you new episodes every single week. So remember, you're going to go to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries, or just click the link down below in the episode notes because that's a whole lot easier. Once you're there, you click the little I agree button and then support now. Enter your email and payment info, click subscribe, and you're all set. You'll get this week's recipe for the sesame chicken and green beans stir fry, 10% off the H2 tabs, and your quarterly live Q&A, which is a one-on-one. Okay, Greg, spotlight on you. We heard a bit of your story, but, I think it's interesting. What we didn't hear is how did you find the idea of molecular hydrogen and then, leading you to Japan and studying it more and all that stuff?
Well, when I was really sick, the biggest issue was I did work in the medical field for a little over 2 decades. And so I really had a very clear idea of how Western medicine works. And I really got like behind the scenes kind of stuff. And when I got sick, I got really concerned because I kind of knew what was going to happen already. And it went basically exactly the way that I thought it would. And there was just no help. And then I started seeing like a lot of podcasts and health gurus or biohackers. And to be quite honest, I followed a lot of that path, got a lot of supplements, tried a lot of different machines, and they also didn't work. And it was extremely frustrating because there was so much contradiction about everything. Like you'd have one guy saying, you should eat nothing but meat. And then you got another guy saying, no, nothing but raw vegetables or nothing but juice, and all this contradiction. The same thing with water. So I ended up just having to take it upon myself. I'm pretty good at figuring things out, but it takes so much time. It's taken me literally just years to really figure it all out and figure out the protocols that ultimately I saw, transforming the life of other people in my life. Obviously, that's where it all really started. One of the things that I did is that I would look at just actual scientific evidence and I would read the hard data rather than listening to everybody else. At this point, I'm like, I just have to think for myself. Just to give you one example, like there's so many people who tell you what water you should drink. And I got so tired of hearing all the different stories that I thought to myself, what do I really want out of my water? Well, I just want it to be clean. Can I just get clean water? I don't care about the pH. I don't care if it's from some spring. I just want clean water. And so I basically figured that out, which is carbon distillation. I literally have here the lab reports. This is actually a third-party lab test. And in this lab report, there's pages, but just so many pages and all the chemicals that are found in water in like page after page after page. And then it shows really like, I think this is really great info. So if I was to give you an example, like PFAS is, I don't know, you probably can't see it very well, but.
Yeah. So for everybody who can't see, so it was 7. What's the unit on that?
It was a ppb, so parts per billion. 6 and a
great.
7, depending on which. There's multiple types of PFAS or forever chemicals.
Yep. So 26 and 7, and then with the carbon distillation, it went to 0.
So that's why I was like, you know what? And then, of course, I also observed nature. So what I did is I would look at scientific evidence. I would also observe nature. And I even read ancient scriptures, a lot of ancient knowledge about health, and then I would tie them together. So, for example, like even hydrogen, there's a place called Lourdes, France. It's like these whole waters of Lourdes. It helps a lot of people overcome medical issues. I looked into that and found out that that water has high levels of molecular hydrogen. The Japanese discovered that. And then, of course, I started reading the scientific studies on hydrogen. And first I was reading the scientific studies, and I was really skeptical at first. It took me years before I even considered trying it. But the tricky part was once I was willing to try it, it's like, where do I get hydrogen? And how do I actually use it so it's effective? Not to even realize safety. I should say before I begin, I forgot to tell you, I don't give any medical advice. I don't make any medical claims. And I don't make any claims for or against any product or products. Everything's my opinion today. But what these guys are now doing is they've been doing a lot of lab tests about a lot of products. It's not just hydrogen products because they're finding a lot of impurities. And they're finding a lot of really strange stuff in a lot of health products. And what I found out from companies, because I've had a lot of companies reach out to me and they try to offer me money and they want me to promote certain products. And I won't do it because, I was sick and I only wanted to share what actually got me better and what I actually use. And all my research has led to, I literally use almost no supplements, actually. I was able to achieve this without doing those type of things, which I know kind of goes against the grain because like I said, these companies that have reached out to me and tried to get me to work with them. But ultimately, what I found out, even by talking to a lot of their owners, is that they admit that it's expensive to make products right. And so they cut corners. And then what ends up happening is you have an inferior product, but they do it for profit. So it's really hard to find good companies. And I really did a ton of homework to find the best carbon distillers. They're not made in China. They're all American. They actually really, truly purify the water. They have the lab tests to prove it. Same thing with hydrogen. I don't use, for example, like these have become really popular, these little bottles. After learning what's in these membranes, and they use plated and coated metals, and these are all from China. You can get them really cheap on Alibaba for like, I don't know, $40. They're not the right way to do hydrogen, obviously, in my opinion. Not to mention that they directly electrolyze water. It's really important to do hydrogen properly because one, it needs to be safe, but two, you actually want it to be effective. So you actually want it to work. And when I didn't know, I was doing a lot of the wrong methods. I wasn't getting results. In fact, I was actually getting worse with my health conditions. But I kept learning about hydrogen. I kept reading these reports, and they were all coming out of Japan. And so the more I learned about hydrogen, I had to learn about it. Really sucked, but I had to learn about engineering. Because you can read the science of hydrogen all you want, but you don't realize that there's multiple different ways to make it, just like you're talking about elemental magnesium, which, by the way, you should ask where they're sourcing it, because I'm not going to make any claims. So I'm not.
Yeah, I have it. It's a conversation for another day. But the person that they contracted with owns the patent on the elemental magnesium. So I agree with you that a lot of things out there, across the board in supplements, to your point, it might be worth pausing here to say, right, across the board with supplementation, there is nothing that can't be made less expensive by cutting corners, full stop, right? And so it makes the argument for really understanding what we're getting, where it's coming from, and not necessarily saying, oh, that's really expensive, I'm going to go with the cheaper one, right? Because to your point too, and all the things that you tried, people often try a million things, don't get any benefit, and then say, oh, well, that didn't work, right? Well, were we even really getting it, absorbing it, able to use it, all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. And, hydrogen is quite complex. Then I found out that in Japan, they were having the same issue before America did. So America hasn't realized it yet. America is behind. Japan is way ahead of the game when it comes to hydrogen. And so I actually found a really interesting story when I wanted to try it based on everything that I was reading. And I was very desperate to overcome my multiple health problems. And I couldn't walk. I was in a ton of pain. It affected my work, which eventually I lost my job. And, from autoimmune issues to a major heart condition to a lot of inflammation throughout my body. So a lot of pain. It's one of the reasons I couldn't walk. I couldn't even work a remote control, the gut issues. And basically my immune system was really weak. I did have tumors in my body on top of it all. I mean, it was just one thing after another. It was really frustrating. And when I wanted to get the best hydrogen, because I tried to go cheap first, I really did, and it didn't work.
Like so many of us, right? We're all human.
I mean, we all want it cheap and easy, but yeah, once you realize what's in some of this stuff, I was actually really upset, because here I'm trying to get better and I'm ingesting stuff that once I found out what it was, I was not very happy. And then once I realized more of the science about hydrogen, I followed the data rather than following a brand name or anything like that. And it actually led me to the number one hydrogen company in the world, which happens to be in Japan. And I couldn't understand why their product was so different. And I reached out, of course, I asked a lot of questions, and I found out that the guy who invented the device, what an amazing story, a Japanese guy who has a daughter who was born ill. She was born with ALS, otherwise known as Lou Gehrig's disease. He was told his daughter would be lucky to make it to the age of 5, which is really sad. And he knew about the science of hydrogen, but you couldn't get medical grade hydrogen in your home at that time. They did have products like the pills and stuff like that, but there wasn't anything that really was going to be the best. And he knew that, and he did a ton of research on it. And he reached out to multiple top engineers and engineering companies. He literally had Toyota, G-Shock, Yamaha, some very special metal company get involved. Luckily, they were all Japanese companies, because a lot of them were the only ones who even had the science to do what it is that he wanted to do as far as building the best machine in the world. And of course, he was told, go to China, you can make it cheaper, they'll leave you more room for profit. And he said, no. He said, I want to build this for my daughter. I have my daughter in mind, and I'm just not going to outsource it. Everything's going to be done in Japan. We're going to do everything properly, very strictly. And they did literally a ton of stuff that nobody's ever done. Still to this day, that they're all one-offs as far as their technology. They use metal that nobody else uses. Everybody else uses plated metals, coated metals, stainless steel, which are really not the best way. That's actually what they use in these bottles. They're using Chinese metal that is just plated. And if anybody understands what plated metal does when you run electrical current through it and have water in there, I'm not going to make any claims, so I'll just let people try to figure that out. And that was just part of it. And then you have to figure out about literally the way the electricity runs through the machine. And then you have to figure out there's a special technology from Japan on how to use low electrical current, which nobody does either, because you have to be masterful in electronics. And on it goes. Everything that they were doing was really impressive. And so I got that device. And that's actually when my conditions really started changing. And that's when eventually my heart condition went away. My cardiologist was blown away. I was pretty shocked, because I'm not even supposed to be alive right now, technically. And so I had to learn about the science of metallurgy. I had to learn about the science of these membranes that they're using. I had to learn the different techniques of making hydrogen, which there are many. And so I had to learn all this stuff. And then I even ended up creating protocols, which ended up being copied by everybody in the industry. Everybody's copying what I created. Even the Japanese didn't figure out the techniques that I'd figured out. Then those techniques were tested about 2 to 3 months after I released them, even though I had had them for years, but I just never sent them publicly. And when they studied them, they literally showed that my technique worked better than any technique ever done. And I'm still developing new techniques and new protocols. And I even released a video about 5 days ago. This 93-year-old woman had multiple different heart conditions, high blood pressure for a long time, and diabetes, and literally told that the doctors really couldn't do anything more for her. And she's old and whatnot. Well, she just did my protocol, and I literally just got an email about a week ago, and I released a video. I showed her medical records, even the email from her doctor saying everything's gone. He's like, everything's normal all of a sudden. And that was crazy. And that's just one of many. I've done so many things with hydrogen and so many medical conditions. So it's shocking how amazing it works, actually.
Yeah, so let's pause for a second. I want to make sure everybody's with us. So essentially what you were explaining and what you're talking about is that the water bottles that are creating hydrogen water, or the processes that you were talking about, right? It's about how we put hydrogen into the water and into our system, and the quality of that hydrogen, the quality of the water, right? And all these processes.
Partially right. So it's not just, I mean,
Okay.
yes, you're going to dissolve hydrogen gas into water, but also my techniques involve also inhaling pure hydrogen gas, not to be confused with like other methods. Go ahead.
So I just want to make sure everybody's with us of understanding. And so this is sort of the next question. So before we get to, kind of conditions or some of those kinds of things, I think, like, I love this woman's story, of being able to, have a tool that repairs and reverses what Western medicine calls disease states, right? These pathologies, when sort of they're out of options, right? I think last time we spoke, you shared your dad's story too. Will you share your dad's story? Because I think it's really powerful.
Yeah, my dad's was unbelievable too. He had arthritis and he was on a really nasty medication called meloxicam, which I've known people to die from that medication because it damages your liver. So they always have to continue to monitor your liver is what they tell you. The truth is we know it harms your liver. He also had issues with diabetes, cholesterol issues, blood pressure issues, and he had glaucoma for over 3 decades. And he didn't really want to change a lot of things in his life because I have different protocols depending on how serious conditions are or how serious people want to get about their health. But my dad was so great because he only wanted to do the clean water, so I bought him a carbon distiller. And he wanted to do the hydrogen, so I got him the hydrogen generator. If people want to see the one that I use, is the website's called holyhydrogen.com, and that's what I use because I'm only into the best. And
yeah, we'll link to it in the episode notes for everybody.
Sure,
too.
And that's what I got him. And so I got him those 2 things, and the only thing he followed was literally my hydrogen protocol, one of the ones that I've developed. And he didn't change anything else. And I didn't think that it was going to make all these conditions really go away. And not only did they go away, I mean, his doctors were shocked because when he was getting his eyes tested, which he has to do every year for his glaucoma, all of a sudden, magically, it's gone. And all his issues actually ended up being gone. So it was very shocking. But his doctor of over 30 years was the one that was the most shocked about the eyes. Right. He's like, this is not possible. He didn't even believe his own results. He actually retested them like 3 times and eventually sent them to somebody else, one of the biggest specialists in the United States, because he said, this is not possible. And you're getting older. These conditions get worse with age. They don't get better. And so to see all this stuff go away was just mind-blowing. And that's just one of many. I mean, I'm really blown by some of the dementia and Alzheimer's patients that I've worked with. I'm shocked with some of the TBI, which is traumatic brain injury patients that I've worked with. Of course, the heart conditions, the diabetes, the blood pressure issues, gut issues has been amazing too. People with celiac disease, Crohn's disease, IBS. I mean, I've talked to people who've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and years of suffering and paying people and supplements and doctors and health gurus and health coaches. And so it's really been unbelievable. And I never thought in a million years that this would be the route that I would go down because I was never a health guru. This is not what I was intending to do with my life. I had other aspirations. Not to mention I was actually a race car driver. I mean, I was, racing cars and I was going to get more involved with that. I mean, it wasn't my thing to be into health. until my health came crashing down, and I had no options. I had no options, so I had to find my way, and I'm really glad that I did. Obviously, it was so hellish going through what I went through. It was horrible.
Yeah, like so many people, we don't realize the value of our health till it's jeopardized, right? And then we realize how little these other things matter.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's all, it's like that
Yeah.
in a lot of things in life. You don't really know, you don't understand until you've been through them. And that's why I do what I do now, because I want to be able to help other people get their lives back. And I've been doing it. I've been doing it for a very long time. It's a little ironic and funny how many doctors I have contacted me for help, how many even health gurus. My techniques have already been literally quote unquote taken, and other people are using my techniques. I don't tend to get credit for them, which is kind of sad because I wish people knew where the original information came from. But a lot of people are using the techniques that I'm using, and there's science to. I mean, I followed the science, really. I follow the data, and that's how I develop
Yeah.
these techniques. They're not particularly complicated, but not a lot of people tend to do them or see the.
Yeah. And what we were talking about before, I think, speaks to why this isn't necessarily more mainstream yet, right? Like, as far as, the quality, the way it's used, like you said, the plated metals, it's complicated, like a lot of things. And so, it takes time for everything to really catch up.
Yes, yeah. Like I said, Japan went through everything that I'm seeing in America. They went through the same thing, and eventually they realized what was going on, so they made some major changes. I mean, just to give you an idea, there's like a really amazing neurosurgeon in Japan who's also a hydrogen specialist. Anybody who knows about neurosurgery, they know they're like top of the heap when it comes to the medical field. And that doctor does use hydrogen, and he tells his patients, and he's very outspoken about it, though he doesn't get paid at all for it because he just does it because he knows it's the best. He uses the same device I use. And he says it's the only device he will have his patients use, the only one he uses, because he's learned so much about hydrogen. And obviously I have too. And all the data, all the best data is coming out of Japan. I know a lot of people in America claim to be specialists, but I've seen a lot of them speaking, and I see how wrong they are about so much. And they literally suggest the wrong things. And I don't understand for the life of me why, unless it's motivated financially. But for me, it hurts my heart because people are suffering. People are looking for answers, and they're going to be disappointed. There was a lady I worked with. She was pretty remarkable. She had type 1 diabetes, and she tried all the different hydrogen stuff, the pills, the bottles, all that stuff. Got no results. She actually was going to give up on it, and she saw me on a show, she said, and then she ended up following the things that I'm doing for myself, my technique and the equipment, and her results were incredible. Her doctor was so blown away. He actually thought I should get a Nobel Prize. His doctor was like, this is not even supposed to be possible. And so that's when a lot of doctors actually reach out to me, is when they see their patients getting better that they couldn't help. And then they ask them, they're like, where did you learn this? And she said, there's this guy on YouTube. Even the doctor was like, what? There's no guy on YouTube
Right.
accomplish such a thing. This is Nobel Prize kind of stuff. And so we'll see someday. Maybe I'll get a Nobel Prize.
Yeah, you never know, right? So, if I recall correctly, there's something like with the research, like 200 plus medical issues that the research has connected, to improvement with hydrogen. So we want to talk more about that. I want to talk about, the mechanism of action, what we know, what we're still learning, and all that stuff. But let's pause here to highlight our partner for this episode. So friends, if you're a fan of Salad with a Side of Fries podcast and looking for how you can support us, we've got you covered with our awesome merchandise. So maybe this is the perfect reminder of your commitment to your health and a tool to help keep you going. So from the workout tanks and the gym bag to a bento box for lunch, magnets for your fridge that say protein and fiber, there are tons of options, truly great water bottles and mugs and all the things. So I feel like you owe it to yourself to take a look. Maybe you need a gift, right? Buy a gift for the people in your life from the merch store. Your purchase supports this show and all the things that we do for you. So head over to website asaladwithasideoffries.com. Check out the full selection and choose whether you are hashtag team fries or hashtag team salad. So simply text the word fries, FRIES, to 844-947-4846. You'll get the link right to your phone. Check out the full Salad with a Side of Fries merch store. And remember, your purchase supports all the work that we do here, shows your podcast pride, and maybe it sparks a conversation for you to pay it forward and inspire someone else to reclaim their health too. So again, just text the word fries, FRIES, to 844-947-4846. This is a toll-free number. Standard text and data rates may apply. Okay, Greg, let's talk about, so we've talked about, you mentioned the neurosurgeon. There's the type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes. You mentioned gut health. And of course, with all of this said, we are not here to diagnose, treat, cure, prevent any disease. They're just sort of the easiest ways sometimes to explain, the whole multitude of symptoms that people experience. What are some of the other things where you've seen really compelling research with molecular hydrogen?
Man, well, as far as research, there's almost, the number's around 2,000 studies at this point. So we're not talking like 10 studies or 20 or even 50. It's a lot. I can tell you all the things like that I've personally seen. I mean, I've seen a lot of stuff. I've seen so we talked about the brain health. In fact, some of the new stuff that I'm seeing, this was really shocking, is literally the potential for hydrogen to actually increase intelligence and just brain function in general. It's really unbelievable. That's one of the latest ones. As far as other things that I've seen, a lot of brain health, obviously the dementia, the Alzheimer's, that's a really big deal because a lot of people suffer from that. And I actually have a really great testimonial in regards to that. Strokes is a really big one too. I actually just released a video a couple of weeks ago about another testimonial, which I've had more than one, but this lady couldn't talk, couldn't walk, and couldn't dress herself. And she was now talking, walking, dressing herself. Her doctors, who had been treating her for almost 2 years with no success, by the way, once they saw the results of what I was able to achieve, they literally, again, like, who is this guy? What is he doing? And I was actually sharing the information with somebody who's running a healing center, like a health clinic. And so I was helping him because he was actually using hydrogen too and not getting results. And he found me. He's like, what am I doing wrong? I went into what he was doing, and it was the equipment that he was using. The equipment he was using, it's called an Axiom machine. It really wasn't working very good, and he couldn't understand why. And I explained to him that not all hydrogens created equal. He got the right equipment, started the right protocol, and then the results were shocking. Like, he couldn't believe it. His family couldn't believe it. The doctors couldn't believe it. And now they're visiting his health center to figure out, these doctors, they want to figure out, which I was shocked because this doesn't happen a lot. They really want to figure out and see what this guy is doing because it's so unbelievable. And that was the same place where the lady with the stroke had been. So it really has been unbelievable for those things. I was shocked how much effect it's had on the eyes. So my father was the very first one. He's probably the first person in history whose glaucoma just went away at being almost 80 years old. So that was really shocking. And then I started working with so many people that I have certain techniques where improving people's vision. I remember my dad just stopped wearing glasses, and I was like, you're not wearing glasses lately, Dad. And he's like, my vision's getting better. And I started noticing changes in vision, and that was really shocking. And then I remember a lady who reached out to me who had macular degeneration, which is a really serious eye condition that will basically lead to blindness. I wasn't really confident at the time that hydrogen would be able to help because it's considered completely incurable, by the way. And I don't care what eye specialist you are, you can't fix it. I did some techniques with her, and her macular degeneration is completely gone, actually, so that was shocking. Then I worked with another person, same thing. And so it's been kind of on and on. The latest one, obviously, was the heart condition we talked about, not just mine, but this 93-year-old woman who had multiple conditions of her heart, all of which are gone. She also had high blood pressure and diabetes, which is also gone. And so, and like I said, a lot of people with gut issues, people don't realize that almost 80% of your immune system is coming from your gut. It's in your gut. And so the way that hydrogen affects the gut has been so positive, again, from celiac disease, Crohn's disease, irritable bowel syndrome, even people with just constipation, leaky gut, a lot of interesting things that I've been learning about the microbiome, not to mention some really interesting data about, and I read this because it appears that we can make our microbiome, which I believe I'm already doing, and I'll explain why in a second, to actually produce vitamins. So like your own body producing vitamins. I mean, this is like next level kind of stuff. Because when a doctor called me, I've been doing blood work regularly because I'm doing some really kind of odd techniques. And I wanted to make sure that what I was doing was working. And I really wanted to make sure that I had no nutritional deficiencies. That was a really big one because we have clear evidence that when you have a nutritional deficiency, it's going to lead to some problems. I mean, one example is like vitamins, it leads to scurvy. You don't fix scurvy with a pharmaceutical. You fix it by getting your vitamin C levels right. And I had a vision where I really believe, based on the data, obviously, that if we're missing anything in our body, then our body's not able to run on all cylinders. And I realized that almost everybody is deficient in something. And so I was trying to do this type of diet that I wanted to do, but I wanted to make sure that I had no nutritional deficiencies. And so I kind of figured this whole thing out, and I began blood work regularly. The very last blood work I got, the doctor called me, which is very unusual. Anybody who's worked in the medical field knows that typically the doctor will not call you unless there's a problem. Because if they called everybody, it's very time consuming. So if everything looks okay, they don't even call you oftentimes. So this doctor called me and she said she was shocked, and she scared me because I thought she found something bad. And she said, no, I'm shocked because I'm a blood specialist and I've been looking at blood for over 3 decades. And in all my years, not once have I ever seen blood work like yours. Never. And I was like, okay, what did you find? She said, it's unbelievable. And you have no nutritional deficiencies. And the stuff that I'm seeing, she said, I just want to know what you're doing. Like, are you taking a supplement or what's going on here? And I told her, well, it's not necessarily quite that simple. I mean, I clean my water to the highest degree, which is carbon distillation. mypurewater.com is the website that I use for their products. And people love discount codes. So the code is Uprising 144K. But then I also use hydrogen, and I was explaining to her some of the things that I'm doing. And she just stopped me. She just said, you know what? I wanted to apply this to my patients, even my own daughter, even myself. She said, because I haven't had a lot of success helping my patients. So this doctor was admitting it. They admit it behind closed doors, by the way. They always admit it
Right.
on phone calls, but they don't tend to admit it publicly. But she straight up told me that. But she's like, my patients are probably not going to do this. They're not going to probably try to get a carbon distiller and get a hydrogen generator. And so she kind of gave up right there. But she was really impressed. And I believe she was super impressed by my lack of nutritional deficiencies. Then she asked me about my diet, which I won't go into because it seems that these days talking about diet is like talking about religion. It's crazy. Everybody gets mad and has their own opinion, which is fine. I mean, I don't mind if people have their own opinions, but I will tell you that I do things a specific way. And she was shocked. She literally thought that it was impossible for me to be eating the way that I was and having no nutritional deficiency. She's like, this is impossible. This technically shouldn't be possible unless my gut is producing nutrients that nobody knows that we could actually do this. And so she was really shocked by that. She even thought she caught me. She's like, wait a second, let me guess. You've been following this diet for like 6 months or something, right? And I said, no, I've been doing it for about a decade. And she's like, a decade? She's like, this is nuts. She said, this should not be possible. They even wanted to do a research study on me. And I didn't want to do it because they wanted me to like change a lot of my lifestyle stuff and then alter it again and all this stuff. I just didn't want to do that. I'm feeling so good that I'm just like, I don't want to mess with it. Clearly it worked. And I've been using these techniques, sharing it on my channel. Everything is free. I share everything.
Yeah. So let's pause because I want to make sure, and that we're very clear with everybody. So essentially, right, what we're focused on in this conversation, the molecular hydrogen piece, a lot of you're doing the carbon distilled water, right? The hydrogen there. And then you're also, and at times when you talk about protocols and things that you're doing with people, it's a combination of, the hydrogen water and inhaling hydrogen.
Yeah, that's definitely part of it, yes.
Yeah. So then what do we know? And based on all the research, what is the understanding of the mechanism of action? Like, what's the hydrogen doing in the body that allows it to create some of these, conditions or really clean up some of these conditions?
Well, it's funny because as far as the full mechanism of action, the truth is they don't actually know. There's nobody in the world that actually knows. They've been able to see that it's doing it. In fact, I wish that, we know about hydrogen functioning as like a selective antioxidant, an anti-inflammatory, cell signaling, super amazing for gut and the gut microbiome. There's a lot of things that it does, but there's much more that they really don't know about nor really truly understand. I actually believe, like, nobody's cracked the code, just so you know, like nobody. I believe that I've cracked a huge part of it, but I can't disclose it right now because the fundamental problem is that every time I disclose something that I've uncovered, other people have taken that information and they're literally claiming or taking credit for my work. So I decided not to release it anymore publicly because it's already happened multiple times. But basically, one of the biggest things that at least the Japanese discovered is how much hydrogen appears to help with free radical damage. So they had a list. It was really amazing. It was around almost 200 medical conditions. And next to every single condition, they had the pharmaceutical drugs that you would have to take for each condition. And then next to that, they had more pharmaceutical drugs for a lot of the side effects that the initial drugs were causing. And the list of medical conditions was big, but the list of medications was enormous. It was huge. There's no way I would remember every single one of the pills they had on there. And then they had hydrogen. And the reason they put hydrogen there is because they had already seen that it was having a positive effect on all these medical conditions. And even the Japanese scientists could not wrap their mind around it. They said, this doesn't make any sense. How can this one thing do what all these pharmaceutical drugs are doing, oftentimes better, with no side effects? And they couldn't understand. Millions of dollars later, and countless years, what they ultimately claim that they uncovered is that it appears that 97 to 98% of all disease, so almost everything, seems to come down to free radical damage. And free radicals,
Yes.
wherever they are, whether it's in the brain, it'll look like a brain condition. If it's in the liver, it's going to look like a liver condition. And what people need to understand about free radicals or oxidative stress, this is some of my latest research. I got some really great stuff that I really wish I could talk about, but I got to.
Yeah, well, just to pause for it, we've talked about this a lot before, right? We have nutrition nuggets on antioxidants. We have talked about inflammation, right? Inflammation is essentially the source of all sickness, illness, disease. It is oxidative stress, like the rusting of, our insides. So oxidation, we think of like when an apple turns brown, right? From being exposed to the air. And what we've talked about before too is, antioxidants essentially lend or donate their electrons to these unstable molecules of the free radicals, right? And then balance them so that they don't create that same stress in the system.
And that's a really good point. But the point that most people don't realize, because a lot of people have heard the word, oh, antioxidants, how wonderful, right? People don't realize that antioxidants, and I hope we can put up a chart, hopefully, antioxidants actually come in different sizes. A lot of people don't realize that.
I call them like locks and keys, right? Like not one lock works or one key works for every lock.
Right. And that's really important because it's like trying to push an elephant through your front door. And so one of the things that makes hydrogen super special compared to any antioxidant in existence is how tiny it is. I mean, it can literally go to the core of your mitochondria. That was some of the first research ever done about hydrogen, was on the mitochondrial function. And we're learning so much. In fact, I believe that I've kind of figured out ultimately what's going on with, like, quote unquote cancer. And cancer, yes, parasites are involved. There's some interesting, really great new data from Japan in regards to that, but also metabolic dysfunction, And so hydrogen has been really incredible for that. And your metabolic function has a lot to do with your mitochondrial function. And so hydrogen really can get into every nick and cranny of the body, which other antioxidants just can't. They can't. So it gets everywhere, including the number one university in the world that researches hydrogen, which is Keio University in Japan. I've done a lot of studying with Japan. They also found that hydrogen opens up ghost vessels. So ghost vessels.
Yeah, like all those capillaries and things, right?
Yeah, it's so important because if you're taking in nutrients, if you're taking in minerals, if you're taking in these type of things, you want it to get in every nick and cranny. You want it to feed the tissues. Life is in the blood, as ancient scriptures. I'm literally quoting ancient scripture there, but life is in the blood. But you have to know what to bring into the blood to really bring that life, because life is ultimately what I've observed brings the healing, in my opinion. And there is no greater source of life than hydrogen. I mean, hydrogen is literally, it's obviously
the most abundant element.
Yeah, and it's truly magical in the sense that the majority of water is made, obviously, of molecular hydrogen, but our sun, literally the stars in the heavens, if we don't have our sun, we are dead in the water. We got nothing. You will die without the sun. And the sun is, again, it's pretty much almost entirely hydrogen. It's also partial helium, but a lot of people don't realize that helium is actually hydrogen. It's a form of hydrogen. And so it's truly magical stuff. And I wish I had this footage for you too, where I remember they had 2 boxes in Japan in a research study where they had full of mice, and they were exposing them to chemotherapy, to radiation. And you could see the poor mice, the effects on them. They would literally stop moving. Their bodies would become cold. They'd huddle up in a corner together. They would stop having bowel movements. But one group, they gave them hydrogen. But they were bombarding all of them. And the ones with hydrogen were running around. They were pooping all over the place. Their core body temperatures were higher. The Japanese discovered, actually, that illness, mostly cancer, but people's core body temperature is lower when they're sick. And they don't notice that. So almost every cancer patient actually has lower core body temperatures than they're supposed to have. And I have medical footage, again, these Japanese from the medical center, the footage is from using the hydrofix, because the specialists in Japan know what the best is. So they're using the machine from Holy Hydrogen, and they have thermal imaging. So they're actually showing how it affects core body temperature. But then I also have on top of it live blood analysis, which I remember a doctor saw my video and contacted me and told me, she said, that's impossible. What you're showing there is fake. And I said, this is legitimate. It's from a lab in Japan. And she said, no way. So she actually bought the same machine they used in the study, which is the same one I used. And then she did the exact same study in her lab, and the results came back exactly the same. She got back to me and she's like, this stuff's for real. I saw it myself. She started giving it to her 98-year-old mother. And that was incredible because it transformed her mother's life. And her mother, it was funny because I guess she gives her mother a lot of supplements, and her mother just takes them, but doesn't really get much from them. And the last time she saw her, her mother was like, look, whatever this water is, this is
that last one. Yeah.
That's the one. And it transformed her life. She could barely get up and stand up for maybe 1 or 2 minutes. She is now can get up and walk around for like 3 hours. And she said it just absolutely transformed her life. And I've seen that over and over. And so it's the real deal. I mean, we're talking about something that's the real deal, not some thing that somebody is saying, hey, this stuff's real, but I have no science and no back this up.
Right. Yeah. And so I think people, right, everybody listening is, right, it's fascinating. It's incredibly promising. And granted, with the understanding that we want to make sure that what we're getting is high quality, clean, right? All of those pieces.
Yeah, just saying really, really important. In fact, I don't know if I'm going to actually ask you a question. Tell me if you don't think this is odd. Of all the hydrogen companies out there, and there's a lot of them, right? And products, only one company actually lab tests and certifies every single product they make and sell. So the machine is lab tested and certified before it ever goes to market. Nobody does that. There's like the only one company in the world, and it happens to be the one that is the number one hydrogen company in the world. And that's super important, because people, they tell you, hey, this makes this much hydrogen. I've seen some lab tests where, they claim certain amounts, and then when you actually lab test them, they're not producing what they're claiming. And that's what's so frustrating about the whole alternative health industry is you hope to be getting something.
Yeah.
But if you're not, it just sucks.
Yeah. Quality is so critical. But with that, the question that I wanted to ask was, can you have too much? Right? Like oftentimes, and I love everybody for their enthusiasm, but sometimes, too much is still too much, even of, things that are health supporting. So, yeah.
Well, it would be really hard to get too much. You can, and that's one of the reasons that the equipment, again, I hate to bring this up again, but the equipment that I'm using followed when they developed it, all the science as far as the proper levels that they're using medically. And so could you technically use too much? I mean, you can technically, but with the equipment and with certain protocols, it's very, very, very unlikely. I mean, hydrogen is literally so safe. It's safer. It's literally safer than water because you can overdose.
And you breathe it out, right?
Yeah, it literally self-regulates, and you literally with every exhale. And it absolutely transformed even like the gases that are coming out of my mouth, for example, because we exhale gases. It's really shocking because there was one of my viewers who they have like this kind of this health clinic. They wanted to lab test me. They're like, I want to lab test the hydrogen man. I want to see, what your results like come up against all of the people that come to my clinic. And he has a lot of athletes also. And he's like crazy athletic. You see this guy, whatever, super muscular and takes really good care of his health and all this stuff. And he brought me in. I released it on a video. And he did all these tests on me. That's where I tested literally top 1% or less of as far as being at the best health in the nation, which is shocking because I'm not even supposed to be alive. So from going from super sick to like less than top 1% is kind of a big deal. But what really shocked him the most, I mean, he was shocked at all my results. But the biggest one was when he was testing the gases that were coming out of me. So apparently one of the things that he does, he has 3 different types of equipment, and they measure the gases coming out of you. You have to check metabolism to see the way the body's functioning, all sorts of stuff that I wasn't really, super informed about, but he was really curious to run these tests on me. The results were coming back. So basically they would show like a chart from 1 to 5, 1 being the best, 5 being the worst. And basically he said most people tested a 5. He said some of the best health people and actually the best health, but also like these athletes, they're testing at a 4. And once in a while they'll reach a 3. And he had reached the 3. And a lot of times he's like trying to do the keto diet to reach a 3 or doing fasting and these type of things to reach those levels. And when he tested me, I have to go back and look, but I believe I tested at a 1. And he just said, that's impossible. He goes, there's no way you're testing it at a 1. He said, something's wrong. Let me redo it. So he recalibrated all his equipment. And I think we did it like 2 or 3 times and the results came back exactly the same. Then he asked me, he's like, wait a second, are you fasting right now? When did you eat last? And I said, well, I ate before I came over. I said maybe a few hours ago. He goes, this is crazy. I've never seen anything like it. And it's because hydrogen has transformed something in me. And it has a very powerful, I don't know if I ever explained to you the data that they found on the anti-aging effects. That was unbelievable because one of the anti-aging studies that they did in Japan was actually, they took a guy and they only did it on this one guy, but they told him to basically eat and live the way that he always does. They're like, make no changes in your life. All we're going to do is and they did use, again, properly made hydrogen water. They didn't use the tablets or these bottles. I'm sure you know that. But so they did it properly. And all he did was drink hydrogen water. He didn't even do the hydrogen gas inhalation, just the water. He did it for 1 year. And then they tested his blood before, when he first started. And then they tested his blood afterwards. Because the Japanese, there's certain information. I'm not a blood specialist, but they basically were able to tell roughly your age by looking at your blood. There's a lot of things that they can see.
Yeah. So, and we did, let's see, last November was the episode. We did an episode about biological age versus chronological age. So yeah, there's a lot that we can tell.
So there you go. And that's what they did in Japan. After 1 year of him drinking the hydrogen water, his blood was 5 years younger after 1 year. And he didn't change anything. Now, in my opinion, if you start adding the inhalation with the water and there's certain changes that you can do to your lifestyle, which I played around a lot with that, there's just a lot that can be accomplished. But hydrogen is going to change the world. I mean, not just of health. I also have certain technology about transforming the world of agriculture so we can make food in a way that literally nobody even knows could exist. We're talking about food that you've never seen, food that would be so medicinal and so healthy for you that it will change the world. Not to mention how.
All right. Well, once that's possible, right? We'll have you back to talk about it.
But there's a lot of.
Awesome. There's so much possibility, right? When we can increase the nutrient density, right? And the way nutrients reach, in the human body, different parts of the body, in a plant, right? Get to the fruit of the plant or whatever it is, the seeds of the plant. There's so much possibility. So it's awesome and exciting to see what can come with all of this. Let's go to our rapid fire off-topic questions that I ask every expert. Are you ready? What's the best thing you've done for your health this week? What's the naughtiest thing you've done related to your health this week?
Oh, the best thing is just drinking my hydrogen water as usual.
Perfect.
The worst thing, I was out with some friends. I'm trying to remember, but maybe a week ago or 5 weeks or 5 days ago, something like that. We had a few beers.
Life balance.
Oh yeah,
right?
I don't get too crazy. I'll now that I feel so much better, and hydrogen's so protective that I don't really sweat it when I do something that's not the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah. Well, it's all balance. Yeah, exactly. All right. If you weren't the hydrogen man, what would you do?
I'd probably be racing cars.
For sure. All right. Your favorite book on any topic other than your area of expertise, or you could give us a fiction book.
My favorite book? Wow. There's so many. I mean, I like the Tao Te Ching, honestly. That's a beautiful book. I love that book.
If you could cure one ailment, disease, or sickness, what would it be?
If I could cure one thing, aging.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's considered an illness. If it wasn't that one, I would really like to do away with cancer. Cancer is one of the toughest protocols that I have. And it's just a really unique one because the cancers are all kind of different. And my protocols are kind of strict. So,
yeah. If you were a superhero, what would be your superpower?
My superpower? Geez, well, I mean, if I was a superhero, Superman would be the guy to be, right? You can fly around and dodge bullets or get hit by them and nothing happens, I guess. But I don't know. Flying would be pretty great. I think everybody likes that.
Yeah. What's your biggest pet peeve?
Well, I'm a germaphobe. I like things really, really clean. It's one of the reasons I like Japan because everybody bows instead of shaking hands. I'm not really into touching a million people's hands.
I get it. All right. Last one. And maybe we know the answer to this. In your opinion, what's the next frontier in wellness?
Yeah, it's definitely hydrogen, though I would say how you apply it. So there's techniques already that I want to apply, but I need the proper connections as far as funding, scientists, engineers. I already know how I want to do it. And I know that at this time, nobody in the world actually knows the techniques, but I do have a lot of good science already that supports the hypothesis. I actually shared it with a scientist from UCLA who's also a doctor, and he did have to sign an NDA. And yeah, he was shocked by what I showed him because I believe there's a piece of equipment that I would like to develop that could do so much, including, I believe, make almost any medical condition go away in a very unique way, in a way that's never been done before. And on top of it, it appears that it'll literally reverse aging in the sense that we could live literally like hundreds and hundreds of years, if not into the thousands. And so that's kind of one of the things that I want to work with in the future if I can find the right people.
Awesome. Well, Greg, thank you so much for being here. Tell everybody how to connect with you for a consultation, where to learn more, all the good stuff.
So as far as consults, I am very selective. I know it sounds weird, but I like to work with people who actually want to make the changes because, you want to see them succeed. For consults, people can email me at uprising144k@gmail.com. If people want to just learn more about hydrogen, I show everything for free on my YouTube channel, which the name of the channel is also Uprising144k. But I'm also on Rumble, Twitter, which is basically X, and Instagram. I'm not very good with the whole computer thing, but I'm on those avenues, those channels, and anybody who wants to support the work that I'm doing, all you gotta do is like subscribe, which is free, give videos a thumbs up, and share the stuff. I mean, that's the biggest one, is when you share the stuff, that's how the word really, really gets out there. And doing podcasts like this, so I'm very grateful, and I appreciate you having me on for that very reason.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll put links to everything in the episode notes for everybody. It's so promising. It's so exciting. And it's another tool for everybody to have in their awareness, especially as they start to hear more and more about it. So thank you again for your time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It was great.
So, all right, friends, on Friday in this week's Nutrition Nugget bite-sized bonus episode, we're talking about Sola carb bread. So maybe you've seen it. I heard about it from my client, Gary. He actually joined us for a couple episodes in 2024 about healthier food options. So we kind of talked about in those, like, are they worth it? Do they really taste good? So he sent me this bread. So with his review, and then we're going to look at it together on Friday in this week's Nutrition Nugget bonus episode. Be sure wherever you're listening, click the plus sign or the follow button, and then your app will alert you when it goes live on Friday morning. All right. And friends, if you are not already, join our membership by going to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries to show your support for this podcast, this community, and your health. You'll get this week's recipe for the sesame chicken green beans stir fry, 10% off H2 tabs, and the quarterly live Q&A that's a one-on-one health coaching session, just you and me. So until next week, remember, the foundations of nutrition and lifestyle are critical. And then consider if adding molecular hydrogen to your routine could help you achieve next-level health. Well, friends, that's it for today's episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. Congratulations for making yourself and your health a priority. Thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to click subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform, share us with a friend, and we'll be back next week. Always remember, you deserve it, and you are worth it. Happy healthy.